Okay, whenever you're ready. Oops.
Okay, thank you. This is the Hideout Utah Town Council regular meeting of July and public hearing of July 13th, 2023. This meeting is being held electronically, so it's no in person. I am calling this meeting to order, and I'm taking roll. For the record, I'm Phil Rubin. I'm the mayor, and I'm looking for Chris Byer.
I am here.
Thank you. Sherry Jacobs.
Here.
Bob Nailberg.
I am here.
Thank you. Ralph Severini.
He's just joining back on. He was on and then he dropped off and then he is joining back on. You there, Ralph?
Ralph Severini, are you there?
Sorry, that was a little system glitch on my part, like Chris had to move something. Yeah, I'm here. There.
Okay, thank you. And it's my understanding that Carol is excused tonight. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, even without Carol, we still have a quorum, and we can continue. The first item for is a brief update on Golden Eagle subdivision. I'm going to let Polly do that. Don't mind, Polly?
No, and is Tim on? I didn't see him. So I'm assuming not. So, you know, the update is, my understanding is that I think around 10 building permits have been issued, and you know, things are moving forward with building permits. So that's kind of the latest.
Yeah, as far as building permits, where are we on the CO process?
Well, I mean, other than the one unit, which is kind of a one lot, which is kind of its own little special situation, none of those 10 permits have come in for COs. So that's not ripe yet, as it were. That hasn't come up yet. And I don't think that we've been asked to look at anything to accept at this point. So I'm a little reluctant to speak to it without an engineer here. I haven't been on the ground.
Okay.
So Mayor, can I ask Polly a question? So how many COs will the town issue without a secondary access road? Is that 30 or 31? Not COs, I'm sorry, building permits.
So it's 30
or is it COs?
No, it's building
30.
permits, and I think it's it's up to 30, and I do believe that they're working on getting it in. So I don't know that it's been asked to be inspected, or I don't have the document in front of me, but it's 30.
It is being worked on, Polly. That's correct. We have given them things they need to address. Those have not all been addressed yet, so the town has not yet accepted it. That's correct.
Well, I drove past and it's clearly still being graded, et cetera, right? The secondary access road. That's why I was asking. So there is, you know, right now, that's not an obstacle for anyone who's attempting to get a building permit, is that secondary access road. But if it's not completed in time, it could become an obstacle for that 31st permit. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And if it's not completed. Mm-hmm.
Great.
Okay. If there's no more questions on Golden Eagle, because I can't see the screen, so you have to tell me if there's any hands up.
I don't see any hands up. I don't think we've asked people to put their hands up, but are you opening it to input then? At this point, Mayor?
No, I'm just seeing if there's anything else from council. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can't see.
Not so far. I'm looking
Okay.
at Sherry, Ralph, and Bob to see if they're going off of mute. Ralph, did you have anything? Because you're off mute.
Sorry, yeah, no, not really. Just thanks for the update. And hopefully we can move this along for, our prospective new residents.
Well, we're dependent on the developer to do the work. So
Yep, I
get
hear
the
you.
work done and meet the code, and then we'll get it approved. So, next item on the agenda is public input. Chris, I'm going to ask you to lead this because I can't see the screen and I can't mute and unmute people. So I'll let
Okay.
you lead that if you see that, and then I'll come back for
Okay.
the item 5.
All right, so opening the floor to anyone for public input for items that are not on the agenda. And if you would like to raise your hand, Alicia, do you want to give them instructions to raise their hand?
Yep, you bet. So if you are on the telephone, you just need to push *9 to raise your hand. And then once we give you permission to unmute, then it's *6. And if you're on Zoom, there should be controls under your, at the bottom of your screen, and just say raise hand.
All right, so far, no hands have been raised.
Okay, then apparently we don't have any general public input tonight, so we'll close public input and move on to the agenda. The next item on the agenda, which is a resolution adopting, consideration of adopting resolution 2023 RXX to amend the fee and rate schedule to include a water rate increase. So before I get into details on that, as far as letting people in the public hearing, there's some background. Last time we talked about a laddered rate system. We got feedback that was not in enough shape to come forward, the rates and so forth. So that's being worked on by staff. However, we do need to raise the base rate for under the old target of 10,000 gallons because JSSD has raised their rates. There have been, if there are questions about JSSD raising their rates, you can go to the JSSD website. That data is available. It's published. They are a public entity. You can research and see that they have in fact raised their wholesale rates to their wholesale buyers, which includes the town of Hideout. And so we need to raise rates effective July 1st in order to cover the cost that's coming into us. We will come back and revisit a tiered schedule once that work is done by staff. So that's what this is about. So I'm going to give that background and let council ask questions, and then we can open it up for public input.
I don't see a resolution in the packet. Did I miss that?
It's not being heard tonight. It's being continued. But we have to, because we've noticed it, we have to open the public hearing.
Okay, so we're looking for public input tonight, but we're not going to action anything.
Correct.
We're going to continue it to the date certain of the next.
I'm confused about that because I thought we have to raise the rates or lose money.
Well, the way that it's been noticed, it says it'll be continued to a date certain. And I think there were some issues with the timing of the notice for the public hearing. And so for those other reasons, we were continuing this to August 10th.
Okay.
Well, one thing I had on this item was, what does the data look like? I think we're working on it, but I think it'd be nice to get that out as soon as we can before, you know, as not only accompanying the resolution, but anything prior to that, as fast as, you know, as soon as we can, so we can understand the numbers and what they look like and why they need to be raised in relationship to JSSD raising them. So,
We've
and
been
the
working,
date,
Is
go ahead.
that's easily done, Ralph. That's easily done. It's we've got that data. And Jan, will you take the lead and make sure that gets done, please?
yeah, I'm working with Susie Becker at Zions Municipal, and she thought she could have it for our August 10th meeting.
Yeah, and I'm suggesting, you know, as soon as it's available, that we get it out to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we never seem to have, you know, having enough time on this one would be really advisable, in my opinion.
So there's two things going on here. One is the rate increase that we received from JSSD. That data is well understood, published, and available. We should issue that immediately, come straight from their website. We know it. We've budgeted for it. We talked about it during budget. We have the data. That can go out Monday without any problem. Okay, and that's what's going to happen. As a minimum, that's what's going to happen to each and every water user in Hideout, because we're paying more for JSSD water and we have to pass that through. Right. The work that Susie's doing for us and so forth is new content, and that may, when we have that, we'll get that shared. But the water, you know, the direct pass through of the JSSD costs, that has to happen.
Okay, thanks. I'm, you know, just want to, let's get that
So we
data
have
out.
that.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that we could all take a look at it, try to
I mean,
understand the analysis there. Yep.
Katie's already shared it with council back when we did budget, but we can certainly reissue that. All right. So because this was issued as a public hearing, and we're going to open it for public input, although this topic will be pushed forward once again to a date certain, this one being August 10th, right?
Right.
So again, if there's anyone in the public who wants to talk about the water rate increase, this is the time to raise your hand. Again, Chris, I'll rely on you to give them the go.
All right, I'm looking for hands being raised, and so far I don't see any.
That was a dissenting view from someone.
The dog bark. Yeah, it's that time of night, Ralph.
I hear ya.
Crazy time.
Supper
Same with
time.
us.
Okay, if we don't have any hands, then I'll close public input on that topic, and we'll move to the agenda items. Agenda item 1 was noticed for this meeting because we thought they were going to come forward, but they also have withdrawn their petition to annex. So, to the best of my knowledge, we do not have anything on item 1 on Benlock tonight. Anybody see that differently, Polly or Alicia?
No, that's correct.
Okay. So we'll go on to item number 2. Since this one affects me heavily, discussion and possible approval to authorize the mayor to execute an agreement with fleet management to cover damages to public work vehicles in the amount of $22,000. So as everybody knows, we had a very tough winter. We have 5 trucks. We were trying this season was the first time using the state leasing program. If anybody has had any car repairs done recently, you know that they don't come easy on the pocketbook. I personally have spent $1,300 on a mirror and I don't know, $1,200 on a taillight. So it adds up quickly. 5 trucks, so this comes out to about a little over $4,000 a piece in damages if it were all spread evenly. It's still a lot. I've talked with Dan and the team about that. We've got some work to do to get better at understanding the kinds of things that are happening to our vehicles in the winter and taking different approach to how we approach certain parts of the snow removal process so that we don't incur this kind of damage numbers, because this is significant. So I'm embarrassed by this number. I expected better from the team, but it is what it is, and we got to pay the bill because we had to turn those trucks in. So I'm working, as I said, I'm working with the guys to make sure that we don't have anything like this number happen again. We are looking at whether some of this cost can be covered by insurance. I know Jan's looking into that. My guess is it's going to be difficult because I don't think the guys called it in each time a damage occurred. So that's another learning curve for them. But we are where we are. So that's the background on that one. I'm open for questions.
And let me clarify, we have already submitted a claim to our insurance, so we will be getting something back, just not all of it.
Oh, good.
So what is our, what's our Jan, I know I asked you a couple of questions offline, but is it usually a deductible by vehicle, or is there group deductible that we could take advantage of, or maybe in the future then renegotiate, our deal with our insurer so that we don't, eat a bigger number next time,
It's by incident and it's $500 deductible per occurrence. So, unfortunately, these damages were incurred like little at a time when ice hits a truck or, shattered a windshield or broke off a mirror. So we have multiple incidents, and the biggest incident was $5,000, and we'll be recovering on that one.
Yeah, so just one thought along those lines, having been a broker in this space is, you can do some, we can do, depending on what we can do legally in the state, but you can have a captive fund to cover your first dollar loss. So it might be something to look at least to cover, to have that rainy day captive fund in the future, so we don't, we may not be subject. Anyway, food for thought, we can take that offline, but that's one way businesses cover, multiple damages across things like this, or general liability.
I mean, I think that's a great thought, Ralph. I'm personally, my current plan is I'm taking it out of Dan's budget, so he won't get to do as much as he might have wanted to do. Also create some incentive for doing a little bit better job next season. Did I come through?
Yeah,
Did I come
no,
through?
that,
Okay.
I heard you, you heard me. That was my only comment. Maybe we could, again,
No, I
take
think
that
it's a great
offline
idea,
to see how
Ralph,
we
and-
can.
Yeah,
how
we can think about that offline.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the meantime, because the total damages are above my approval limit, I do need approval of council to write the check. Although, even though we are getting, I don't know what the net is for the town. Jan, is it just the 5,000 we're getting back, or is there anything else?
At this
not
point,
know?
it's probably just the $4,500. I had a discussion with our insurer, and if we have multiple claims in a short period of time, it raises our rates. So we talked about
Yeah.
another incident, but I think this is the only one that makes sense.
Okay, that's a good point. All right, so instead of $2,200, it's really going to be $1,800 roughly. But still, it's above my approval limit, so I would appreciate by a yes or no from each of you. I'll poll you that you're okay with us to pay the bill to get this done. So, Chris, okay for me to sign the check?
Yes.
Thank you. Sherry?
Yes.
Thank you. Bob?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you all. And again, Dan is committed to doing a much better job on this in the future, and I'm confident that he'll be successful. Item 3. So Alicia, was the letter from the fire chief included in the package? Again, I can't see all that stuff.
Yes, I included that in the package.
So, all right. So if you had a chance to look at it, great. If you haven't, I'll give you some background. The fire district, Wasatch Fire District, has a sort of a steering committee type group that provides, resident service user feedback, and represents different parts of the county to the fire district to help them make good decisions around what else they need to be working on and all that kind of stuff. Because if you haven't heard, we are working with the fire district to put a fire station in Hideout. I can tell you more about that later because it's evolving, but it could be a very good win for us for a number of reasons. One, it would bring fire and emergency services much closer to our doors. 2, it should reduce, because of that closeness, it will reduce your fire insurance rates because we'll be inside the 5-mile limit. And 3, because it will service all of Wasatch and not just Hideout, there is potential for us to work with the unincorporated Wasatch areas in the town, and not in the town, in unincorporated Wasatch area in our area. So that's up by Black Rock, and it's Tuhey. In figuring out how they can also contribute to the growth of this, the creation of this fire station. So it's pretty exciting. But in the meantime, the fire chief has asked for a representative from the town of Hideout, which I think is really nice. So I wanted to open it up to council members. They've asked for a council member. It doesn't have to be. It could be planning commission member or others. But I wanted to get it on the table. We don't have to have an answer tonight. But I wanted to plant the seed and see if anybody has an interest in being in liaison with the fire district. I think it's possible that it may be something the planning commission may also have that interest. But I'm throwing it out there.
It may also help us get support commercial, because commercial insurance is very expensive.
Oh, yeah.
And, restaurant insurance is not cheap. So having a fire department closer even builds that one piece of the infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, it's my intention, Ralph, of making sure that that particularly the commercial businesses up at the Black Rock area are aware of what we're doing and ensuring that they are participating in helping the town either financially or towards others or supporting other of its goals in exchange for the fact that Hideout will be creating land for this location. And just so council knows, we're looking at the uphill triangle parcel nestled between Deer Mountain and the Wolf residence, which is the hillside debacle up on the hill that I've already been back to and asked them to rehydroseed it since they lost all the hydroseed when the hillside sloughed off, so they can fix that messy hill up there. That's where our other parcel is for the town. So if anyone has an interest from the council would like to do this, let me know. Otherwise, I'll take it to the planning commission and see if they have an interest.
Mayor, this is Chris. I have an interest. I'm not sure I have the bandwidth, but I think Planning Commissioner Jonathan Gunn actually has experience already in this area. I'm trying to remember a conversation I had with him, which I'm not completely remembering, but
I think you're right, Chris.
if he feels like if he has the interest, he might be a good candidate.
Yeah.
And if you can't get, so Mayor, if you can't get, a representative from Hideout, I can be the alternate, I'll volunteer if there's not a better candidate.
Thank you, Chris.
Sure. But I would like you to just check with Planning Commission, and I really do think Commissioner Gunn is possibly highly qualified for this role.
I think so too, Chris. But again, I wanted to start with council. But
Okay.
I think you're right.
Thanks.
Okay, so if there's nothing else from council, that's item 3. Item 4 is discussion of fraud risk. I'm gonna turn that over to Jan because I think that's hers to lead.
So,
Jan, still on?
yes, I am. Let me just introduce the topic. Katie Shepley has a presentation on her laptop who will join us, but maybe a little late. Since municipalities have been a target both of cyber crime and just, increased fraud, the state has implemented policies, and our insurance company as well is following up on what the state started and asking us to tighten our fraud risk protocols and policies. So Katie and I have been working on this for quite a while, and actually Cameron joined in and taking a look at what we already had in place within our town code. And right now we have low risk, and we're looking at implementing some further procedures to take us to very low risk. So one of those changes that we're trying to make by year end is to have an internal audit committee. And as the town continues to grow and we get more people who are very well qualified in various areas and are offering their time, we've utilized JD Cronin on our budget committee, and he's willing to step up and work with us on being an internal audit. And this will raise our fraud risk to a higher point level, which means lower fraud risk. And that's the most significant change that we are implementing. But that should give us points on our insurance and work towards lowering premiums and just give us more assurance that we're doing what we can to mitigate any of those potential losses for the town. And it's a discussion item at this point. And given we're still in the process, we're still dialing down on the details. I think we just present it next meeting and get your input. We'll circulate the information as soon as possible. And let's just continue this concept for next time.
Jan, do we have a separate cyber policy?
We have, our insurer tried to implement one, and so many municipalities pushed back and said, we can't comply with that. We don't have the funding or the resources. And so our insurer eased off of that. Cyber is covered in our general policy, but we did not get a specific policy put in place.
Yeah, that's called dark cyber cover, and it can be contested. So when you think you're covered in another policy, oftentimes you are not. So it just so happens I'm working with all the major global cyber insurers in the world and the cybersecurity companies right now in a global initiative for Amazon Web Services, which has been actually published. But in any case, the point being is it would be good if we could explore that avenue for the town to have cover. It may be cost prohibitive. It's very difficult to get cover, but it would be really useful to at least explore the options at this point.
Okay, I'll ask about it.
Hey, Ralph, do you, I mean, given our size, I mean, we're certainly a target,
we know
easy,
that,
quote unquote, easy target, as we all know.
Yeah.
Because we keep getting requests for buying gift cards and stuff. But
Yep.
At the same time, most of those companies that you're talking to are probably big global players. You have any thoughts, since you're in this space, of who we would talk to at our size level? I mean, we got a $2 million budget.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I don't want to drain the meeting on this, but we're focused. Again, I work for Amazon Web Services. We have hundreds of thousands of customers. Many of them are small and medium-sized businesses. Many of them, the cost prohibitive right now is they can't get cover. So we're working with our customers, at least to run on the cloud, to get easier access that's more cost effective with insurers that will help our customers become more secure. And so it's what I would call a flywheel positive effect globally. And it's the most difficult coverage to get right now. But yeah, offline, maybe I can help you guys figure what our options are on this, since it's a global problem. The White House just issued the White House Security Initiative.
Ransomware,
Yeah, the SEC just promulgated standards for capital markets, banking, and mostly capital markets. So there's just so much going on here that eventually people are either going to have coverage. The feds are looking at establishing a multi-billion-dollar fund for backstopping the insurance industry right now for cyber loss. So it's a tough thing. But let's see if we can't do something. I don't know. We're small. And it may not make sense, but if we can get a cyber quote, we should.
And I just wanted to jump in
Okay.
and just mention that in my experience, this fraud risk is something that comes from the state auditor, and it impacts kind of our rating as a town in terms of our security. So some of the things are just very basic, do we have a conflict of interest policy? Do you have 2 people sign off on the checks, that type of thing? And it's a long checklist, and you add it up. And sometimes smaller towns have a harder time, or small cities, because we just don't have the manpower to have, it's harder to have some of those checks and balances. But the idea is to try to implement them and make sure that, over a certain amount, you have 2 people signing checks or that type of thing, which we do. And so, as Jan mentioned, ours is already low, and you're always striving to get the lowest so that we can be the most protected and kind of meet those ideals and get that kind of stamp of approval from the state auditor.
Thanks, Polly. Yeah, exactly. And, Dan's worked really hard with this with the staff and division of duties and rethinking things out and training some people into places that they hadn't planned on working before, just because it does create separation of duties, which has helped our scores. And the fact that, Ralph, Chris, I mean, we've all worked in commercial business, and we know we all have internal audit long before we bring in the external auditors. So I think the idea of having the town having its own internal audit committee is a great thing. And besides helping our score, it'll hopefully help us, should there be incidents, catch things sooner, because we're doing the work ourselves as well, instead of waiting for the guys to come after the year is closed. So.
Yeah, Mayor, I also think
I'm highly supportive of it.
Yeah, I think internal audit will help us also with prioritization, because there's so much coming at the staff at all times. And I think if our internal auditors are able to, have some findings that they discover, it might help prioritize certain activities that may not be addressed quick enough.
Exactly.
Just so you guys know,
So Jan,
sorry, just so you guys know, Katie
Go
just
ahead,
jumped on, and she is ready
Great.
to present if you want.
Let's do it. If you want me
Yeah,
to,
why not?
if you can, I'm going to share my slides. And what I'll do is I will talk through where we're at from a fraud risk perspective, but give you a really quick overview about what fraud risk is and the internal controls that really will make sure we don't misuse any public funds and that all duties are performed effectively and efficiently. So there are 8 really measures that we look at as it relates to fraud risk. One is the separation of duties over cash, which is one of the most critical, and it's to ensure the proper separation of duties are maintained and or mitigating controls are implemented. And we would look at our separation of duties over cash. When we get to that, I'll show you that we do have the 12 separate duties. All 9 out of the 12 we're able to accommodate without a problem. 3 we accommodate, but we do have mitigating controls in place. And if you want to go through any details of those mitigation steps, we can walk you through that. The second is that the required commitment of ethical behavior, which is to ensure that government officials cannot use their position for personal benefit. The third is to adopt and put practices and written policies in place, and to ensure proper oversight as well as direct the organization to a desired outcome. We want to be able to hire and train qualified staff, make sure they have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to perform their functions. Provide effective training to ensure employees possess at least a basic understanding of legal and accounting requirements of the entity. Implement a hotline to ensure public and employees have the ability to anonymously report concerns. implement the internal audit function to ensure an organization conforms to a set of specific criteria, and then the use of the audit committee to ensure financial oversight. So the next group slides, this takes those 8 pillars and basically tells you where we're at with them. So you can see down the side here, we have 8 pillars, and they're the exact 8 we just discussed on this. And you can see the segregation of duties. We are achieving the full 200. And as I said, we have mitigation controls in place for 3. And when we do have this internal audit function in place with a very qualified risk manager, what we're going to be able to do is kind of say, okay, you know, when a check does come into the office, just because a person that can deposit the check might also be a person that can receive the check, here are the mitigation controls in place. And that internal audit function will go in and make sure that we're doing what we say we're doing from a mitigation perspective. Commitment to ethical behavior, we are accommodating. Ethical behavior itself, conflict of interest, we are also accommodating. Reporting fraud and abuse, and IT and computer security. Everyone has cybersecurity, and make sure that we are adhering to all the rules and regulations associated with that. We are looking a little bit more closely at personal use of entity assets. We have some exceptions that we're going to be talking through and making sure we've got the right controls over. Travel, when we're going to do travel, we want to make sure everyone is putting the right procedures in place to make sure that we have the right authority to be able to go and make that travel, and making sure that we're doing it efficiently and with the best costs in mind. And credit card purchasing. So these 3 you can see we're going to take a closer look at and make sure that we are accommodating by the end of December. Cash reporting, receipting and deposits, very, very critical control. We are accommodating that, and that's really part of the segregation of duties as well. And then our procurement, we are following the procurement procedures and making sure that when we are buying things, we are getting the best price and we've got the right competition that we're looking at to ensure that we've looked at exactly what we need to look at. Hire and train our staff. The entity does not have a CPA, CMA, CIA, so we do not have those points. But we do have members of the team that have at least a bachelor's degree in accounting. So we do get that 10 points. The 5th one was provide effective training. Our employees and elected officials required to annually commit in writing to abide by statements of ethical behavior. We get that one. Have the governing board members completed entity-specific training? They have. And regardless of license or formal education, does at least one member of the management team receive at least 40 hours of formal training related to accounting, budgeting, and other financials? Yes, we do. So we're very happy with a lot of these. And then implementation of a hotline, we definitely accommodate at this point in time. And then you can see number 7 and 8 are to implement an internal audit function as well as an audit committee. The internal audit function will do we'll go in and look at all of our separation of duties as well as all these policies and making sure that we are accommodating those. The audit committee will look at our quarterly financials, and we have started reporting those on a quarterly basis, and we will do a much more diligent job in doing that on a quarterly basis. And the audit committee will oversee some those quarterly reviews, and then we'll also show those to the town council. So right now you can see we're at 330, and if you look up here, 316 to 355 shows that we are in the low category, and we are striving to get to the very low. We hope to be at 385, which will be exceptional if we can get there by the end of December. We're very comfortable. We will be able to get to that 385 and give the council a very strong understanding that we are really following the internal controls and the fraud risk guidance. Then when you really talk, you know, when I was talking about this 200 points, that's a lot of points. Those points really come into play here. There are 12 items, as I talked about. 9 of them we are able to accommodate without issue. There are 3, because we don't have a large staff, we do have people that do receive checks that are also able to make journal ledger entries. We have people that can collect cash and check payments that also can adjust customer accounts. So we have very strong mitigation controls in place for that. And we're going to make sure with that internal audit function that we are following these and there are no issues associated with that. But I do have the list of all mitigation controls. I have looked at them and I'm very comfortable with them at this point in time. And I will also be working with the internal auditor to make sure that we have the right mitigation controls in place. So we get the full 200 points, as I noticed here, because we have strong mitigation controls in place. So the last page, and then we can have an open discussion. The town risk level is very low at right now at 330, which indicates that we have effective and efficient controls in place to ensure the town's operations deter and prevent the misuse of public funds. Our goal is to get to 385, and to get to the 385, we are going to reinforce with all of our people the published policies and practices. We are going to ensure the procedures are audited by a designated risk expert by 12/31, and we'll start that before then, but we are telling you we'll get to the very low risk with the extra 20 points on the internal audit function, and then we will have a review by the audit committee to ensure that quarterly financials are reviewed and there are no surprises at the end of a fiscal year. So that's the presentation I had, and if I'm open to any questions that you guys might have.
This is Phil. I just wanted to say thanks, Katie, for that, and Jan for the work you guys are doing. Those of you who've been on the council longer will remember that we started in pretty rough shape in the accounting financial space from the state auditor's perspective several years ago. And, Jan and the team have been working diligently to move us up the scale. We're up the scale is a good thing, not a bad thing. And they've done a terrific job. And I'm thrilled to hear that looks like we have a route to get to the tip top of the rating schedule. So good job, guys.
And very strong. We've got a 72-page document with very strong forms that we are going to, especially as it relates to the travel and credit card purchasing, where you see we have 0 right now. We will ensure we get to that 10 points there to make sure that we really adhere to the right paperwork and receipting process going forward. So yes, we're in great shape. So I appreciate all the support from everyone at this time.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Katie. I really appreciate your presentation here. It was really clear and conveyed a lot of information at a glance. So thanks for putting this together.
Yep, my pleasure. Okay, then I will turn it back over to the next agenda item. I will stop sharing.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, everybody. So, Chris, I'm going to turn over the remainder of the meeting to you. I am going to surprise my wife by showing up a little earlier than anticipated, which is a good thing. So I appreciate that, and thanks for all of you for doing this. I'm going to get off the side of the road and get back to my campsite and go back to my vacation. So good night, all, and Chris will take it from here.
Enjoy. Have fun.
Thanks.
Alicia, I just attempted to share just the agenda. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, because it's on the screen over here. All right, I'm going to ignore it now.
Yeah, and
great.
just so we know, Rachel wasn't able to make it tonight, so Thomas is voluntold to present for the Planning Commission for.
All right, thanks. Yeah, we'll move into committee updates and Planning Commission. So Thomas, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. So the Planning Commission heard a few things at the meeting in late June. They discussed a concept plan for a potential development called Hideout Point it ends with an E. There was a prior hideout point that didn't end with an E, and so this one ends with an E. This was relative to a potential brew pub location between the claim and the Wolf property. So there's about 15 acres up there that Tim and Diane Schoen own, and they came in with a concept plan looking at a bit of mix of uses. So for a brew pub kind of on the portion of the property that is closer toward SR 248, and then maybe some housing on the backside. The concept plan was generally pretty well received by the Planning Commission. There's issues with regard to density. What would the rezone request be, and what would the zoning outside of the brew pub area, which is about 2 to 3 of the 15 acres, what would the remainder be? So they'll be coming back to the Planning Commission with a more holistic concept plan, probably over the next month or two. There was a concept plan discussion relative to the Benlock annexation petition. That is, of course, an application that's currently been withdrawn, so I won't go into any detail there. And then there was a bit of discussion which was relevant to the the residential casita zoning, kind of the small unit zoning, small lot zoning, a little bit on SRO, short-term rentals, as an overlay district, and those will be presented to the Planning Commission at the next meeting. That will come to you then. That will come to you at that point, Council, for adoption, for hearing or not. And then the only other item on the agenda that they heard was the Bloom development. But again, that application has also been withdrawn in its current form. So that was the makeup of the Planning Commission meeting.
Thomas, just to make certain, the SRO and the casitas are they stand alone and are separate, correct?
They stand alone and are separate. Yeah, the resort casita kind of did stem from the Bloom development, but it's also a potential zoning designation that could apply to future cottage development and or Deer Springs. And so it is something that we would like to bring forward, have in our arsenal, if you will, our zoning designation opportunities in the town. So yeah, we are going to bring that forward because we think there's validity down the line for that. And short-term rentals, the SRO, the short-term rental overlay, that also has applicability. It did for Bloom, I should say, and it does for other areas of town as well. So we'll bring that forward.
Thomas, just a question about the casita. So can you define for us? Well, I've stayed in a casita once in Moab. It was just basically a 2-bed, 2-bath, looked like a townhouse, but it was part of a hotel. Anyway, I just want to make sure I understand what a casita actually is. It's not a tiny home, right? It's a small.
So it's not a tiny home,
unit, right?
It's not a tiny home. You're right. It's a single family. It's a single family detached unit. And, we're really looking at developments that, might be significantly smaller, maybe a maximum lot coverage of about 1,500 square feet. Maybe the lots are, give or take, 5,000 or 6,000 square feet. So they're really smaller, almost cottage units. But we're just kind of calling them residential casita because they could apply, cottage and casita are kind of interwoven, and so they could go either way. But yeah, it's really just a small single family detached dwelling unit.
And they could exist even without an overlay zone on them for nightly rentals, right? They could exist on their own with or without that. Right.
They could exist as full-time primary residential use, or if they were part of a development and Planning Commission and Council agreed to an overlay, short-term rental overlay zone designation for them, they could end up being nightly rental units as well.
Okay. They couldn't be construed as low-income housing. Remember when we're looking to build the annexation, we had the small cottage designation, so to speak. They're not synonymous, correct?
They're not synonymous. These aren't income restricted in any way. And so these are just smaller units. You could make the argument that by having a smaller square foot. The market might value them a little bit lower than it would a larger house, but they're not income restricted or dedicated for affordable housing. Not to say that couldn't be a future use down the road, but that's not the intent of this ordinance. It is just to allow cottage casita development. Yeah.
So more
Chris, you had
density,
something else
individual
because I had one more question too.
Yeah,
realize.
but Ralph, we have this constant like struggle with. There's a lot of press out there about how bad nightly rentals are, right? Because then they take away potential rental properties for folks that might live here and may not, may not have the income or desire to buy something here, and yet we need a wide variety of residents in this community, not just a bunch of second homeowners and such, but in order to keep it a vibrant community, especially when you think about that new resort going in and all the workers that are going to be required. And you talk about traffic and people having to drive up from the valley or from the Heber Valley or wherever they're going to be able to find some place that they can actually afford to live and yet work up here. I know we're trying to balance revenue generating ideas because we need it, right? As a town, but as a community, we also need to provide a variety of housing types so that we can have a variety of residents.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that was, this discussion really came about probably, gosh, I would say maybe eight months ago, working with Nate Brockbank in Deer Springs to look at different opportunities for housing types in the Deer Springs development. Typically when we think of housing, we kind of think of a ladder. You've got larger single family dwelling units. You may have smaller single family dwelling units. You may have townhomes, and then you may get into casitas or cottages, and then you might even get into multifamily kind of flat kind of flats, apartments, or I should say condos, more likely than not in this area. But, we try to think about a housing ladder. I think that you're right. This does offer a step in the right direction to, offer a smaller unit that might be a little bit less expensive for a middle income family, right? They're still expensive in our market because the land prices are so expensive, but it may give a little more option to others.
Yeah, that's right. Or a single family or single story dwelling for somebody who wants to downsize and doesn't need a huge footprint, but wants to still, live in this community. So we just have to keep thinking of, creative ways to try to encourage a housing variety here.
That's right. And this is a step in that direction. That's correct.
Good. Thank you.
And Chris, I read where, and probably all of us may have seen that, the expectation is the Mayflower Resort area will add 5,000 workers. So that's
exactly.
Pretty,
and
pretty big.
4,500 of them will be driving, maybe more. 4,800 of them will be driving from someplace far away.
Yeah. Hey, Thomas, a couple of other quick questions. I know we'll have a chance to review this. Just wanted to make sure, is the casita defined as less than 2,000 square feet? Did I read that correct? And two, it looks like you managed to keep all the side yard, front yard, and rear yard setbacks within the context of our new zoning. Am I correct on both of those?
So we're looking into finalizing that. So that's what we're working with the Planning Commission on at the next meeting. We are.
No, but as it reads now. So yeah, I get that. So
yeah, as it reads now, we haven't defined front yard setbacks because we were looking at the opportunity for kind of clustering maybe some casitas originally as part of the Bloom project. So we were trying to tailor it to that as well as to other projects. And, there was the opportunity to look at maybe a driveway off of a main public road. It could be a private driveway. And then you may have 2 or 3 casitas at the end of that driveway to take advantage of the landscape, et cetera. So we didn't include a setback for the front. So to answer your question, that's not yet finalized. We are tweaking that, but roughly they'll be about the same as you've seen throughout the town. Side yard setbacks that would be 10 to 15, 5 to 15 is typically what we have in the town now, depending where you are in the MDA or outside of it. These would be roughly in the same vein as those.
Yeah, it looks like you had 20 on the sides where the original MDA called for 10. We changed that for good view shed reasons. I don't know if it affects the casita type buildings. Anyway, I guess we'll have more of a chance to review some of that, but you know, those are my thoughts initially on the exact zoning of the casitas, so to speak. So
Yeah, right now the sides were set at 20 and the rear was set at 25 and front was a little bit ambiguous depending if it was off a public right of way or a driveway. And so that's where we are right now. That may tweak a little bit with planning commission, but that may be what you end up seeing at your next meeting.
does a casita include a garage?
They can have a garage on let me make sure I'm saying that right. Did we include that? Yeah, we allowed for a garage as a conditional use on that site. So yes.
Thanks.
Well, the planning commission is certainly busy.
Yes, they are.
All right. Any other questions for Thomas? Thomas, thank you. That was very good report.
Great, thanks.
All right. All right. The next committee is the Community Engagement Committee. Council Member Jacobs.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, we finally have a couple of events planned for the summer. We have a concert on July 28th and one on August 11th and working on one for September 17th. We are currently selling tickets, so I hope everyone will go to the town website or various places around town where it's posted. We are hoping that all the council can come this time and check it out. We are asking for some volunteers to help. We have a lot of committee members that have been working really hard, members of the community that have been working really hard on this, but it takes a lot of people to put this together, taking tickets, setting up, things like that. So if anybody would like to volunteer, we thought anyone who's running for council would be great to volunteer because then they could meet people when they're taking tickets, right? So we're going to put that out there to all of the candidates. But we would love to have people. We have food trucks planned. I think we've already sold over 30 tickets in one day, the first day. So hoping to get a great turnout and have some fun, get the community together because it's good for morale. And yeah, this town likes to party. So hopefully we'll all have a good time. And then Chris, we talked about your idea of a community garage sale and everyone loves that. We just have to get through these concerts first. So maybe the end of August, we can do one. And then we'd also like to speak with you once the park opens about maybe doing some guided hiking and mountain biking. So that's where we're at. Everybody's been working really hard. We have an awesome committee.
It takes a lot of effort to have a lot of fun.
It does. It really does. But it's worth it.
So, Sherry, how are you trying to get the word out for volunteers? Are you like...
Well, right now, we've just had the committee members reach out to people they know. So I'm going to try to reach out as well to, the candidates and, hopefully people listening in on this. And perhaps in the next email that we send out with the concert flyer, we will ask for volunteers as well. We don't need 100 people to volunteer, we just maybe need a dozen. So, because then everybody can work shorter shifts, if everyone takes a half an hour, of taking tickets, they get to meet more people and then they go have fun. So.
Right. Fantastic. Good luck. I'm sure you just have to ask the right people and then you should get your dozen.
Yeah, I
right?
think so. Yeah.
The other question I always have, because it's an outdoor event, do you have like rain contingency plans or, storm plans or how is that working for the concert series?
No, we have a tent. Actually, I am sponsoring the tent myself for the town, for the band. But it is, in order to tent the entire event, it is pretty expensive. So we will just hope, like last year, we thought we were going to be rained out and we made it. And we're just hoping, because this time of year is usually very dry, we're taking a risk. So.
Okay. I'm just curious.
And hopefully can reschedule, like if it looks really bad, we can reschedule, but,
If you can get the band and
right.
the, support that you need, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, kudos for such a great job, putting this together.
Thanks. I mean,
With very limited resources here.
yeah, the venue was a challenge, but we are going to be doing it at Public Works again, at least the first concert. The second one, we are hoping the state park will be open and we can combine it with a celebration of the state park. But for now, we're planning on Public Works, and we do have a backup location if that doesn't work as well. We also have more merchandise to sell, and so hopefully we'll create a little bit of income.
Yeah, if the state park doesn't get open by mid-August, maybe it'll be open by your September concert.
Right.
I know they're working hard, but delay.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of which, hey, thanks, Sherry. That was really cool. It always is what you're doing, so to speak, much more interesting than some of the other stuff. Hey, can we use the new park? Because I think some of them have facilities. Is that, be really nice to be able to go all the way down to that new facility. And
well, that's the plan for August. Rachel on the Planning Commission reached out to me because she wanted to do a celebration for the state park opening, and we're hoping that we can combine that with one of the concerts we already have planned and just move it all down there. But we don't know yet because they don't have a date to open. So for now, we're planning as if we can't, and then if we can move it, we will.
More parking and all that stuff. So that would be really
great.
fun. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, and facilities are they put some vaults in there for restrooms and such. So they're prepared for groups with shelters and stuff, and small groups with shelters and all down there. But yeah, Rachel's on the post committee as well. So yeah, Sherry, we have had discussions with the park manager about that.
We're hoping at least one of them will get down there, but
yeah, well, that'll be exciting when it happens.
I hope you guys will all come this year.
I'm blocking my calendar right now, Sherry.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Me too. Hey, do we have to pay? Do we actually have to lease the state park? Is there? I'm guessing there's some kind of charge.
We
what's
talked
that
to them,
look
and they do charge, but Jan mentioned something about if we have volunteers that will come and do like a cleanup morning, that maybe they won't charge us. So we have to wait and see.
Ralph, we're overdue for trail maintenance there because there's no access this year, so we haven't even been down there. So we might be able to do some trading, give them things that they need, which often is volunteers to help with projects that they want to get done in the park. So we've got a good relationship with the manager and the state park, so we just want to keep that going.
Cool.
Okay, thanks, Sherry. All right, the Parks, Open Space and Trails Committee, the Post Committee. We had a meeting 2 days ago with UDOT and the committee, and so we met our new Region 2 planning manager. His name's Jeff Dupay. We met Nazi Treweek. She's the access coordinator for new development in Region 2, and we met Ivana Vladislavjevic, the traffic engineer. So she does data traffic and safety. So we had a really lively conversation, including Jan, Rachel, and Kathleen on the call with myself. Unfortunately, Thomas couldn't be there. We kept stalling Thomas, hoping you would join, but then we just eventually just plowed on without you.
I apologize. My public hearing was going far too long.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, it didn't work out, but we covered as much ground as we could without you. I think there'll be additional meetings with you next time, Thomas, but we were able to do a presentation to the best of our ability. Thank you, Kathleen. We talked a little bit about the economic development projects under consideration. The town general plan, we showed them snippets, we showed them the post plan, raised concerns for the increased traffic and safety that's coming with our new developments, and also with the new Jordanelle State Park day use area in Ross Creek. We're expecting, a lot of visitors there when it does open. Then we also talked about the sad roadkill issues that we have on the highway 248. Everyone, unfortunately, it feels like, as Kathleen pointed out, there's a new deer killed every day out there. It's, bad situation. So we also talked about the desire for connectivity of non-motorized trails through the town, connecting Park City to Camas, because we are the connection of Summit County to Summit County through Wasatch County and Hideout. Also, Jan had a UDOT project list with certain relevant projects on it that we didn't get to discuss, but we touched on. We also talked about the corridor agreement that we currently have in place. The town of Hideout has a corridor agreement in place with UDOT. And then we got on to talking about ideas for matching grants, et cetera. We did agree, Thomas, you'll be happy to hear this, that Jeff did agree that one of the first things we need to do for the spine trail is that engineering study. It would be kind of the right first step. So there are various grants available. I think Jan is going to be following up on those items. And we touched on other, we talked about a lot in an hour or slightly more than an hour. We talked about wildlife fencing and the lack thereof in certain places, or inadequate wildlife fencing. Who's responsible for it? UDOT parcels and their right of ways versus other landowners who might be responsible. So we're going to, Jan, I think it's going to be in touch with our local UDOT maintenance station, who has all the details about the fencing, who owns what piece of property the fencing is on, et cetera. So we tried to get traction on that, as well as the plans for traffic lights, which are that is mentioned specifically in our corridor agreement that many people on this call have seen before, or we've talked about the different areas where UDOT has targeted traffic lights. We also talked about crossings, under, over, people, wildlife crossings. We talked about the realignment that is expected in the Ross Creek area, to take its shoreline drive where it comes out and realign it, which, Thomas, I think you had on your drawing that you were showing earlier. We covered a ton of territory and then came to the conclusion that Jan and Thomas are going to have to organize the next meeting with Jeff and the other UDOT reps, perhaps Carl Miller from Summit County, Don Taylor from MAG, Bob Allen, the RPO with Summit and Wasatch counties, et cetera. So we tried to get the first steps made. One of the things that's stood in our way to date in order to get traction on all these things we want to do is UDOT. And I think we feel like we finally made our first good contact there, Thomas, and everyone. So we've got a few other action items, but that's what happened 2 days ago. It was a very productive meeting. Anybody have any questions? And I want to thank Kathleen for sending out notes that I could read from.
We got the notes, and you guys had also recorded it. So thanks for doing that. And I think that Jan has already followed up, and we're trying to coordinate the next meeting with them. So I think she's on right now. So maybe.
Hey, Jan, do you want to add anything?
Sure. Well, you encapsulated a lot of my efforts, and they cross over so much because, UDOT is continually working toward merging roads and trails. And so I had initially reached out to Jeff to coordinate some of the new development that we're seeing with our planning commission and our EDC plans, and just updating him on what we need as we see projects coming online on 248. And then it was easy to make the next step to coordinate with the post committee, because trails are important to us too. So one of the biggest issues we have with UDOT is our town is governed by Region 2 in UDOT, and Wasatch County is Region 3. So as I'm attending meetings in you know, say in Wasatch County, we have a regional planning organization, an RPO. It's a formal organization. We meet monthly, and it's in Wasatch. It's discussions around Region 3, and so I actually have to reach out to Summit County to connect with Region 2. So that's kind of a hurdle because you get funding from UDOT based on the type of project and the collaboration. So specifically, Thomas and I are meeting on the issue of how do we, as Hideout, get traction on projects, given we're in Region 2 and most of the communication in our county is 3. So that's our next meeting. And we are in the process, and we're bringing UDOT into discussion with the regional planning organization and the people at Mountain Land Association of Government. So hoping to make some good traction there.
Thank you, Jen. Very, very exciting. Thank you for all that you do to keep us connected regionally. We are not aware of everything that you do, and I'm sure you are working very hard to make sure that Hideout has a seat at the table, even if it's at multiple tables.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions before we move on to Thomas again for the Design Review Committee?
My report is short for DRC. We did not have a meeting this past month. There were no submitted applications for any of the projects. They're well underway with their prior approvals. So a free month of reporting, I should say.
Okay, thank you. All right, that comes to the end of our regular agenda. Do we have a need for an executive session tonight, Polly?
No, I think we have we only barely have a quorum here, so I wouldn't suggest an executive session.
Okay, great. So with that, we would be finished with our agenda. I would need a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
So moved.
All right, thank you, Sherry. Thanks for seconding, Ralph. Okay, now poll everybody. Bob.
Aye.
Aye. Ralph.
Yes.
Sherry.
Yes.
And Chris is a yes. All right, thank you all for your
Thanks,
attendance
Chris,
tonight.
for running it.
Yeah.
All right, thanks everyone.
Bye.
All take care.
Good night.
Okay, good night.